Yeah?
Yeah, it's okay. So please
I start?
start to the first one.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. I'm Ezio Manzini. I come from Italy. I spent all my life trying to put together design on one side and a social and environmental issue on the other side. And given that in the last 50 years, because it's probably 50 years that I'm working in this way, both design on one side and society and technology on the other side changed a lot. I've been very busy in trying to understand what is happening and trying to interpret and give my modest contribution to what it is. I have to say that personally my real drive has been more on the side of society and environment. So for me, in some way, design, the technique of design and the culture of design are very important because I think and I hope that they could bring some contribution to what are the problems that individually and socially we are facing in this moment and we faced in the past period. To do that, I mainly worked in the university, but not only as a teacher, as a researcher, and mainly we did action research. That means that we did the projects, and afterward we try to have some reflection of the project and make some theory on this reflection, and afterward to try to make better projects. Given that I'm quite old at this moment, I had been lucky to follow all the discussion about environment since when was the beginning of recognizing the problem, and design was recognizing the problem, and we were talking about a green product or more environmentally friendly product. And afterward we discovered it was not only an issue about product and material, but was an issue of the way in which we work and we behave, and so we moved from the product to the product service system, looking also to the services in particular, and considering the services a way to in some way interact with how people behave and how people think. And moving in this direction progressively, luckily in this year, even if the very general situation unfortunately is worsened as a whole, but so not we only, the small group, but the whole human being have learned something. So we learned something about sustainability, we learned something about the importance of the technological side of sustainability, but also the social side of sustainability. And this made that me and the group with whom I work and I worked progressively moved from the most environmental side of the story toward the most social side of the story. Not because the one more technical and environmental is not important, of course, it's very important, but in some way we felt that the design had a lot to say that was not yet said on how we can use our tools and our capability to help some change that are necessary to move toward a more sustainable society. And this is when we arrived more or less 15 years ago to really focus on what now we call design for social innovation towards sustainability. And this is a kind of activity that we started with a group of other people, as I said, 15 years ago. And we did experience, and in this last 15 years, the subject really boomed. Of course, not only for us, it boomed because it was really obvious that there was a need to consider social change, and also something happened into the society that several kind of wave of social innovation happened worldwide, I would say. For sure in Europe, where we start from, but afterwards also in America, but also in China, where me and my group, we have a lot of relationships, and I think also in Japan, but we can come back on this point afterwards. And in some way, I did several projects, from the project several papers and writings, But at a certain point I felt the need to in some way put in one paper, in one big larger text, what I've learned in these last 10 years, 15 years. And here we arrive to this book. And this book is, for me, is very important. I don't know for the others, but for me it's important. And I try to propose it and support it a lot because it represents what me, but not only me, a group of people that was working with us, that was in the beginning was European and afterward it became worldwide, a network of different group of people working on design for social innovation. And we made several experiences, so we learned a lot. And I tried to put all this experience together, and this is what is the book. The book is about if society changes and if there is this wave of social innovation, and if design also changes, how we can use the new emerging design to help a process of social innovation towards sustainability, to promote it, to help in promoting it, and to help in accelerating it, given that unfortunately the situation is very grave, so we have to try to accelerate the process of transition. And so this is the book. The book on one side tries to give the very general view, but also in some chapter it gives some special, well, at least an overview on different tools that the designer can have. Because one of the problems that we are facing is that given that the design, let's call it, of the 20th century was mainly focused on specific products that could be a three-dimensional product as a physical industrial product, or it could be a two-dimensional product as a poster or a graphic designer, or another three-dimensional product as an interior. But the new design, the design that is emerging in a connected society, it's changed its own nature. In some way, it's a capability of dealing with different kinds of problems. That could be practically whatever. So if we really want to deal with social innovation and with the possibility to influence this social change, the first step as designer is to redefine what is design. Because if you use the same mentality of the last century, probably you have some difficulty to understand in which way we can play a role. Therefore, the 2 points are interconnected. On one side, we have to redefine how, if you want, the social change influenced on design, because also the design is changed thanks to some social change that comes from connectivity, the new technology, the new dimension in the global society. So the design changed, and only if we well understand these changes in design, we can go back to the society and to see if we are facing big problems, how design can bring a contribution. Which kind of contribution? I realized that I didn't make many examples until now, but just to give the flavor, if as in Japan, as in Italy, we have this issue about the elderly population, many people, including myself, says that if the demographic pyramid is turned and there are more elderly people than young people, there is no one traditional solution that can work. And therefore, you need to think the whole story of the elderly and the relationship between elderly and the whole society in a different way. This kind of shift is a social innovation. And if there is a shift, how design can help this shift and to reorganize a society in which the role of elderly is different, the possibility of mutual help, the possibility of having intergenerational help could be supported. So, and you can design products, service system, digital platform, whatever, could make it easier. Or if people would like to eat more healthy, organic food, you had to change the overall system. So this change in the overall system ask for a way of considering what should be designed. I think that this is something that is really happening worldwide and will happen and is happening also in Japan, of course, in a very peculiar way, because luckily every country and every region has their own way of doing, but I don't know Japan so well, unfortunately. I would like to know it better. But from the few discussions that I have had or what I read on the newspaper, I know that all the issues, for instance, the two that I mentioned now, the elderly population and the issue about food, but we could have whatever, the issue about transportation, the mobility, see in Japan too possibility and the cases example of new way of doing, and the school of design on one side and the design profession on the other should recognize this very rich boiling pot in which very interesting events are happening, and we should find a way to play the role to help it. And this is where we are. How